Hello, Marco Chigani, and this is Straight Talk. With me today is Simon Lee and Webster. Simon Lee, you're with the Chinese University of Hong Kong. You're an accountant, and you're with the Institute of Hong Kong, Taxation Institute of Hong Kong. We're going to talk about the budget, which is tomorrow. Now, I'll ask both of you similar questions because you represent the Taxation Institute of Hong Kong, and you're from the Chinese University. You're an accountancy professor. So we're going to talk about the budget, as I said. Paul Chan's budget is tomorrow, Wednesday. And I'll ask both of you, what do you expect him to say?
I want the financial secretary to have something more strategic because in the medium term, yeah, rather than a spreadsheet type of budget, I mean allocations of resources on the revenue side and the expenditure side. What I mean strategic is that in the medium term and long term, the government should widen its revenue base. To alleviate lots of the social problem.
That sounds like increasing taxes to me.
May or may not. It depends on the time, whether it's the right time to increase the tax. Currently may not be the right time. For example, the revenue of the government is too dependent on the land sales. And something need
So when you say strategic, how do you want him to be strategic?
Introduction of new types of taxes. For example, the goods and services tax, which have been discussing for so many years.
That was rejected by the community.
But many countries, they implement goods and services taxes, and it is working very well.
You, what do you think, Webster?
Well, I think that the budget should cover at least short term, which is those suffer from the Hong Kong people, the financial secretary needs to cater for, and also for the medium and long term to cater for the international trend, tax rules changing, so that we can make a more healthy and more sustainable tax environment.
Now, you're from the Accountancy Institute of Hong Kong, and you say there should be some immediate relief. Are you saying that there should be cash handouts?
Actually, the Institute do not object this option, but is that this option to be the best one? It can be arguable because some business or some taxpayer, they are suffer. But some of them are benefit. Say the personal hygiene, say the e-commerce, they are benefit. So is that really that we need to have a cash payout to all of them? I will have a question on this.
You talk about targeted cash handouts.
Targeted.
Professor, last year we got $10,000 each, right? What do you think? Should we have that now as well? Because a lot of people are suffering. Targeted handouts is going to be a bit difficult. That's what the government will say. Either everybody gets it or nobody gets it. What do you think?
Now, certain sectors suffer seriously from the COVID-19. They should obtain some sort of assistance from the government. This is what I think I and Webster...
But when you say some people suffered from the COVID-19, everybody suffered from the COVID-19. Most businesses have, some have not, as Webster said. Some made money from it. Like supermarkets made a lot of money, right? But then ordinary people, most of the ordinary people, they've lost jobs and so on. How do you target handout?
Now, may or may not to say that all people suffer from COVID-19. The financial sector is quite well, especially those people who are involved in IPO. They make lots of money, and they receive many months of bonus. But for tourism sector, I think this is a target group. Politically, I quite advocate that the distribution of cash out.
I was going to ask you guys about this. Cash vouchers better than cash handouts, right?
Now, because the government made so many mistakes in the protest time and also in fighting against COVID-19, lots of mistakes, you see. And people expect that the government should give some sort of compensation to them. But if you look at our surplus, we still have the...
$800 billion.
Yeah, it still have.
But that's down 30% from the year before.
Now, if you look at the budget of other countries, the deficit is around 10 to even 15% of GDP. So Hong Kong still has the ability to bear such deficit.
Okay. Webster, now $800 billion in our reserves now. And it was over $1 trillion last year, and the professor says that Professor Lee says that we have enough compared to other countries. Do you think the financial secretary can use this $800 billion and spend a lot of it? Some people are asking for another $300 billion injection. He did that once before already during the pandemic. People are asking for another $300 billion. Can we afford that?
By the figures, it can afford. But
we can afford.
We can afford. Yeah.
But that'll bring us down to $500 billion.
Just as I said, we need to target. We need to focus on target suffer people. If that is the case, when you figure out the figure, if that is need at least this amount or in more than that, I agree. But if you are just making a cash payout without any target, so it may not be the best option. That right now we need to make some people for short-term happiness.
Professor Lee, you know, we've got $800 billion. Some people are asking for another $300 billion, as I just said, in various forms of pandemic relief. But we don't know the figures yet. It's projected that the deficit will be over $300 billion. So you've got a $300 billion deficit, and then you want to hand out another $300 billion in pandemic relief. That'll bring us down to a place that historically Hong Kong has never been before, because we've always had a lot of reserves, right?
Now, you know that the pandemic time is almost the worst time in the history of Hong Kong. So suffering maybe 15% deficits of GDP is quite okay. Other countries, they did or they do the same. For example, Singapore, almost 15% of GDP. India, 9.5% of GDP. So Hong Kong still has the ability to do that, but should be targeted, as Webster just mentioned.
You know, both of you said targeted. I'm still trying to find out target in what way.
Now, the employment support scheme distribute 80-something billion to almost all employers. Supermarket, e-commerce, as Webster mentioned, should not be helped.
They were helped. They were given a lot of money, but they were making a lot of money. The supermarket.
This is not the target group. People may not be aware that 80-something billion is almost the annual revenue of Sun Hung Kai properties. It's quite lots of money. Okay, so distributing money to the target group should be done, not to all people.
So who are the targeted groups?
Those sectors who suffer seriously from the pandemic. For example, Singapore, they distribute money to their employers, but to different percentage. Okay? Those in the convention sector, tourism sector, they receive higher percentage. E-commerce, supermarket, lower percentage. They also have the unemployment relief fund. Okay? So these are the detailed mechanism. Okay? Hong Kong needs such detailed mechanism rather than just blindly distributing money.
Webster, you know, if you follow, you obviously have followed every year the budget, right? Because you represent the Taxation Institute. You know, every year, going back to John Zhang's days, okay, when he was a financial secretary, he always said we need to keep money aside for a rainy day. He always said that, right? And it is not in the culture of the Hong Kong government to overspend. They feel safer if they have a large reserve. You mentioned Singapore and other places. They don't have that culture, I think, because they see this pandemic as something different, right? So they're willing to spend more money. Do you see that culture in Hong Kong, that spend more? Because the culture always has been save more, not spend more.
Well, I think from the Chinese tradition, saving is one of our tradition habits to keep the money in our pockets, same as the government. So you said that previously the FS will keep the money to a rainy day.
For a rainy day.
So right now is the rainy days. We never know when the rainy days come. So right now we have money so that we can cater for the rainy days, and otherwise we will have some structural deficit or get some trouble for some business. They are shut down or cease the business, and it will cause another problem, is the social problem.
Professor Lee, you said earlier that we need to look at our revenue base, right? And you talked about maybe a sales tax or something like that. Other people are saying we are in a rainy day, as Webster said, right? So instead of raising taxes, we should be cutting taxes.
Exactly. Now is not the right time to raise taxes.
Right time to cut taxes?
Right time to cut tax. We should raise tax only when the economy is booming. But when the economy is booming, people expect that, the government is rich, there's no need to increase the tax, to should give some sort of rebate to the community. When it is rainy day or even typhoon day, then people expect that the government should help them. So it's the never-ending story. Anytime should not raise tax.
Should we cut taxes, Webster?
I think in case for the direct taxes, we may consider to have a little bit cutting. But from the taxation institute point of view, we reiterate all the times that we need to have a stable income stream, which is in direct tax for over a decade.
If you support Professor Lee that we should have something like a sales tax?
Maybe, but we need to have some consultation or the debate amongst the Hong Kong people. But you know that we've done it before. Right?
And it was rejected.
It's rejected. But right now, we need to have a full picture to Hong Kong people to see that right now we have the structure deficit, not the amount, but the income side, which is the taxes. It's very over-dependent on the economy. It goes up, the income goes up, and right now, very obvious, we have a pandemic, so we have a huge deficit. People need to rethink why this situation will come up and how to deal with it.
All right, quick break. Susan, don't go away. Thanks for being with us. This is Straight Talk. We're talking about the Financial Secretary's budget tomorrow. With me is Professor Simon Lee from the Chinese University. You're an accountancy professor, and Webster Ng from the Taxation Institute of Hong Kong. Now, Professor Lee, you talked about perhaps a targeted raising of taxes, right? And you mentioned sales tax. There are many ways of doing sales tax. How would you do it?
Now, in many countries, the government's levy tax on the goods and services. Okay, if we take into account of the statistic, the retail market and catering market in Hong Kong, altogether, annual sales revenue from the retail market and catering market is around 600 billion. So you just charge 4%, is already 24 billion, which is equivalent to about 1 or 2 pieces of expensive land. This can reduce the land price. You know, not a social problem in Hong Kong originate from the high land costs. Okay?
Right.
Shopping mall, and then the residential unit, etc., etc. And you know the Gini coefficient is worsening. While in Singapore,
well, the rich are getting rich and the poor are getting poorer in Hong Kong.
Exactly.
Right?
Singapore, the Gini coefficient is perhaps the lowest in 18 years. So I think the government should consider seriously the introduction of goods and services tax.
A good and services tax, but you know, what goods would you target? If you go to the supermarket, if you buy food, would you target that? Or if you target people who buy computers or high-end goods?
Can be discussed, but my intention is to charge the goods and services on all sorts of goods and also services as well. Such
all
as,
kinds of goods?
Yeah, such as packaged travel, everything, and tutorial.
Even milk and
except
rice?
perhaps bread and rice and milk. This can be discussed.
Because most places that have this kind of sales tax will exclude daily essentials.
Exactly. I agree that that should exclude daily necessity.
A sales tax.
Well, for the sales tax, I agree with Professor that we need to exclude some daily essentials because in the fairness, most people believe that the richer, they need to pay more tax, but the poor one need to pay lesser.
But in Hong Kong, that's not the way it's done.
Yeah, right. So is that fair to have a sales tax? I think in 2006, we have an answer. But right now, of course, we can redo this exercise again.
How do you think the public will react this time? Because 2006 was a long time ago.
Yes.
It's 2021 now. Has public perception changed, willingness changed, and agreed to every time you go to the supermarket or shop or whatever, there's a sales tax. I've lived in the U.S. I've lived in a lot of places where, you know, you look at when you buy something, there is a sales tax and so on. Are Hong Kong people accustomed to it? Are they willing to accept it?
We need to explain for them because the trend for the increment of the revenue is far below to the increment of the expenditure government spend over the 20 years. So if the trend goes like this, structural deficit will come, say, within 5 to 10 years. If from the view of the public finance, in case we do not have some stable income, the reserve will sooner or later be used
depleted.
Clear.
Professor Lee, as what Webster said, sooner or later the reserves will be shrinking. How long do you think it is? Is it 5 to 10 years, right? You say
It's just a structural.
Okay, sure. Now, are we really in danger, Professor Lee? I mean, Hong Kong has never faced such situations before. Are we really in danger of arriving at a situation where our cash reserves have shrunk to such a level that we're in dangerous territory?
It may come perhaps in 10 years or 15 years of time because of the aging population. Lots of money need to be spent. And also as what Webster just mentioned, we have structural deficit. What do you mean by structural deficits? 20% of the government revenue originate from the land sales.
That's correct.
And then the stamp duty, another around 15%. Salaries, maybe 11 to 10. Profit tax, 22, 23.
Why can't we raise more on land sales and on the stock market as shares sales and stock changes and stock exchanges, the sales of stocks and so on? Raise the taxes there.
No, but the trend, the global trend is to reduce or even eliminate the stamp duty. U.S. market, Japanese market, Singapore market, they don't have stamp duty. And from a technology perspective, we can move the stock market from one place to another place easily. Just a matter of connection. Okay? So in the medium and long term, Hong Kong should consider seriously to reduce or even to remove the stamp duty. Now,
you mean to say no stamp duty, but increase taxes through a sales tax way?
Yeah. Because the stamp duty on buying and selling shares is not a global trend. Okay? People, especially the fund managers, if there are opportunities, they may consider to buy shares in the U.S. market.
But wouldn't that, Webster, wouldn't that, you mentioned about the rich getting rich and the poor getting poorer, right? The Gini coefficient. But then wouldn't eliminating stamp duty, but charging tax on consumer goods increase that rich is rich and poor is poor?
Well, from a point of view, to maintain the stability of the tax revenue is the most important point. So, of course, sales tax can be one of the options, but I think that we can, based on the existing tax mechanism, say stamp duty from the stock market. You can see the stock market is quite good right now in last year. So we can, based on the existing mechanism, to change a little bit so that we can have some sort of the additional tax revenue. Although those tax revenue are subject to the economy changes, but it is relatively low reaction compared with the salary tax and the profits tax.
All right. Now, I'm going to ask both of you to look into your crystal balls and tell me what you think the Financial Secretary will say or do tomorrow in his budget. Professor Lee, what do you said you wanted a targeted approach, right? That's what you want, but what do you think he will do?
I think he will indeed say some assistance scheme for the target group, such as the tourism, or maybe there may be a little raise in tax in certain area. I don't know, stamp duty perhaps is not the right choice. Car license fee is the right choice. The car license fee.
Increased car license fee.
Yeah, has been frozen for so many years. Even I drive, I think it increased by 20%.
But there are too many cars on the roads anyway.
Exactly, too many cars. So we need to raise the tax in order to reduce the number of cars to alleviate the pollution problem.
Do you think he will give handouts like $10,000 or vouchers, $5,000 vouchers? Do you think he will do that?
Now, regarding vouchers, it's arguable because the administrative fee is very high. And then I also said before there is a kinds of voting because there are two color grids in a society. Then certain color grid, the retailer, the caterer related to that color may claim that, hey, there are so many customers we receive because we receive so many vouchers. So I don't think government will distribute the voucher.
The vouchers won't work, but it has been distributed in other places.
Yeah, I think distribution of money is possible. Politically, as I mentioned, the government need to compensate the society because it made so many mistakes in fighting against the pandemic.
What does your crystal ball tell you?
Well, apart from Professor's point, I think the Financial Secretary will emphasize on those future trends, which is what we know that is the OECD on the international tax trend, which is called digital tax on Pillar 1 and global minimum effective tax on Pillar 2. I think he will contribute more on those areas so that to let those, say, private equity fund to stay here, to carry on business and get some tax incentive. Otherwise, those global business or multinational business, they have get out of the tax havens from, say, BVI or Cayman Island, where they need to station. We need them to station here so that when they make the money, make the profit, we can charge them for the tax.
Okay, now I've got a couple of minutes left. I'll ask each of you, if you were the Financial Secretary, Professor Lee, what would you do? We've got an unemployment rate of about 7% now, a huge budget deficit, shrinking reserves, but a public demanding help. So if you were the FS, what would you do? It's a difficult situation.
I will distribute $10,000 to every resident in Hong Kong.
You would distribute
$10,000.
$10,000.
And also, I would initiate the third phase of the employment support scheme. Okay, should be done earlier, actually, December last year. And also, I will initiate a prompt but effective review of our revenue base. Okay,
all right.
To make it more sustainable.
What would you do? If you were the FS, what would you do?
If I'm the FS, I will donate my monthly salary, say 1 or 2 months, to show my commitment to the Hong Kong people.
Should that apply to all government officials, from Carrie Lam down?
Hopefully, yes.
So all senior government officials, Carrie Lam makes over $400,000 a month, right? And she says she's got piles of cash now because she's been sanctioned. So it's all in her home. Should she distribute that?
Yeah. Correct.
And what else would you do?
Just as I said, that I need to cater for short-term, medium-term, and long-term for the tax environment to create Hong Kong as sustainable.
So that's all you would do? What about helping people who have been suffering, the unemployed and so on?
Maybe this is the way, the measure, how to cater for them. But this is not the policy-wise. The policy-wise is on this perspective to help the people. The way need to further discuss by other tax groups.
So you won't do what Professor Lee says that we should give handouts like $10,000.
I'm not really agree, but I do not object.
You won't object to that. What last word for you, Professor Lee. Would you agree with him that government officials should give away some of their monthly salaries as a gesture?
Absolutely. They made so many mistakes. They need to compensate the society.
So they should give up money and say, here, we're giving, it's not a lot, it's a lot, but collectively it's a lot, but it won't help the economy much, but give it up, right? Both of you agree with that?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. See you next time. Good evening.